I was 13, 14 years old when I was in Sahara, when I was living in this refugee camp. And my family was there for over a year, for about 14 months. And then we left Denmark and we came to the United States, to Chicago. We started to call the camp Sahara after the sand surface. This was a field that was plowed and then sand was put down and these tent dwellings were erected. It starts with a visual identity project that my father did at the camp, where he decided that the camp should have its own visual identity, that the refugees should name the camp, that each tent in this refugee camp should have its own sign um, that sort of signifies the occupation of a person that lived in the tent. And in that sense, it sort of represents an important, I think, design act in a very extreme situation. It was important for him to act as a designer in that moment. What very often happens is that refugees are sort of identified by being refugees. And of course, our occupations identify us. The fact that he decided to name the camp, to make a logo for the camp, to make signs for each tent, to identify people by name rather than by number, by refugee number, I think that was another sort of form of resistance, because he wanted to assert an identifying image to our identity in that moment, and that was significant beyond himself, but for other residents of the camp. The exhibition is graphic design work, in which I use graphic design as a way of telling a story from my own personal experience, and a story that's very important to my family history. I discovered photographs that my parents kept from that period. We received some video footage from our relatives who live in Germany and who came to visit us in Denmark at that time. Watching refugees coming into Europe from the Middle East, while at the same time finding some material from our experience in Denmark. Those two things coincided and created the beginning of what would become this project. An important aspect of this project is to actually record this experience. Partly out of fear that memory will fade, it attempts to honor my father's work, which I think is very important and quite a sort of a unique example of the way that design can have agency beyond utility and beyond function. But there may also be a healing aspect to this. Of course, war is a traumatic experience, and being a refugee in many ways is a traumatic experience. But my memory of that particular moment is a pleasant one, right? Because we were around people, we were safe, we were optimistic. A project like this also doesn't happen without somebody else recognizing that it's potentially an important story to tell, or that one is onto something. And in this case, I was in Chicago several years ago working on a project at the Art Institute with a curator whose name is Karen Kais. And when we were finishing that project, I was telling her about my personal history, and I was telling her about this project which I was just sort of starting to explore, and her reaction was really positive and strong. And I think that and she is the curator of this exhibition, Acts of Sahara, Acts of Memory. But I think her feedback in that moment, her reaction was certainly something that was important to me continuing the project, because it gave me a sense that this was something that was worth pursuing. However, this project, I think, expands that definition of design, because here we're not necessarily talking about solving a very specific problem, right? It's not so much about utility as it is about a more expanded kind of possibilities that exist within the framework of design. So to what extent can design contribute to our feeling of dignity, or to our identity, to helping us assert our own identity in a particular moment? To what extent can design contribute to our to storytelling, right? To reconstructing memory, right? If it's important to us.